into a carbon-freezing facility where he stumbles upon his past.
It's Montrose. It's been a long time, Django. Yeah.
There I am, age of 45 years old, right before I turned evil and went to the dark side. I really had to go back through my videos to try to find something of me before I went on testosterone. And I believe this one here, 45 pounds, and I'm walking around right around 198 pounds. Isn't he adorable? If you go back through my earlier videos on YouTube, before I painted my plates, all of those videos was me natural, as a natural lifter. And my weight was not much different than it is now. I was at my heaviest in November at 230 pounds. And this competition here that I'm showing, this is my first meet that I ever did a cycle on. So the first cycle I ever did was for this meet in Vista right here. And I forgot what my total was, but it was a little, I want to say a little over 1,500 pounds. So why am I making this video again? We always seem to be talking about this. Well, I got this lovely comment from Ahmed El Karimi 2681. And he says, you can do the things you love without juice. When taking juice, you will do the things you love for a while, then you will not do anything but health problems. Be natural, be healthy, respect your age, or it will make you respect it, smiley face. Lovely comment. And I replied, you know what would make for an interesting conversation? Instead of you telling me about my life, you could ask. You could ask why, at the tender age of 46, after being a lifetime natural, would I go on testosterone? From there, we could have an interesting conversation and learn about each other. That just doesn't happen. Most people, they're really not concerned about my health. They don't care about me at all. They see a 60-second video and they decide there's something about me that pisses them off. Either they resent that I'm strong or it bothers them. I don't know. And then I get crappy comments about being on juice, and they're usually pretty presumptuous. They presume that I've always been on gear, that I take a ton. They don't know anything about my past, my history. And when they say things like, you know, it's going to cause health problems, or it's going to be, well, what about the health problems I was having? What about the reasons I went on to begin with? I mean, isn't that an interesting conversation? Did I just wake up one day at the age of 45 and decide, you know what? I want to be Ronnie Coleman. That's a good life choice. Yeah, I was a lifetime natural. I went all the way to the age of 45. As a matter of fact, I was that sanctimonious prick that would look at the other guys that were all juiced up and be like, look at that guy. Yeah, I bet he takes a ton of gear. I bet he couldn't even lift if he wasn't on the sauce. Now, luckily, I kept most of that in here and not out here, so most people were never aware of my resentful little opinions every time I went to a meet and some guy beat my deadlift by 300 pounds in the same weight class. And I was never really all that resentful about stuff like that. I mean, like everybody else, I had misconceptions and I didn't really know what I was talking about. But I started asking a lot of questions. You know, why would you do that? Why would you, after being lifetime natural, 45, you don't even take supplements, why would you just decide to just go on steroids? Well, it isn't that simple. I didn't just go down to Mexico and raid a pharmacy and just start shooting myself up with a bunch of stuff. No, there's levels to this thing. It started out like with everyone else. At the age of 45, I was feeling horrible. I was depressed. I didn't want to do anything anymore. I wasn't interested in my wife. All I wanted to do was sit in my garage and watch YouTube videos and eat. That was it. Did I work out? Yeah, I forced myself to work out. Did I have a job? Yeah, but I hated getting up every morning. Did I play with my kids? Sure, but it was miserable. Did I find my wife attractive? I've never not found her attractive, but I had no drive. I just wasn't interested. And I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And for about a year and a half, I suffered in silence. And it was after a buddy that I was working out with said, why don't you get your blood checked? I did. And you know what? I found out I didn't have any testosterone. So what's better? going on TRT to replace your body's natural production, or not having any? What are the long-term health implications of that? Could that be bad for my health? I don't know. I started doing research, and this guy that supposedly is a doctor, he's got a doctorate, and it said doctor on his sign in his office, he suggested I would have a better quality of life if I went on TRT. Or at that time, well, they were calling it hormone replacement therapy because they look at the whole hormone spectrum. And that's how it started. Plain old TRT. And within 2 weeks, I felt like a 20-year-old. I'm telling you right now, it was the best decision I ever made in my life, and I can't believe I waited this long. Holy crap, my entire life changed. Every metric of my life changed. I wanted to train. I felt young. All my injuries were healing. I was all over my wife, my kids. I had tons of energy. Like everything else, everything kind of finds its level, an equilibrium. Your body wants to find an equilibrium. So if you're adding stuff to it, it's going to find ways of leveling things out. And after the initial, whatever of going on, things started to line out, and I started to feel like a normal person. Then I started, doing some research. And I wanted to still keep competing, so we did. We of course added to that. I did my first cycle, my first meet when that meet in Vista, and I want to say 2019. And I wasn't on a ton of stuff. I never got above 220 pounds at any point. As a matter of fact, the heaviest I got was this year. Well, the end of last year, like November, December, I was 230 pounds. That's the heaviest I have been since 2003, when I was fat and I was 250 pounds. I've always maintained a reasonably low weight class, and for reasons. See, I'm not making this video really to talk about what I use or don't use, or to justify, or to try to say, like, it's good or bad. I'm making this video more about how presumptuous people are. They see a 60-second clip of a guy training online, and they just decide that's what he does. I was doing a squat where I was doing short reps, to the pins, the quarter squats. And it was central nervous system training, essentially. And some guy leaves a comment telling me I need to do full range of motion squatting. And I was like, okay. Like, oh, should I? I had no idea. I just decided one day I'm going to squat, but I only want to squat 4 inches. That's my training. That's what I do. That's or Tommy H5 recently did that video where he was using bands, and someone's telling him it's ego lifting, and you're just doing that to try to show off. And I'm like, no, it's part of his training, and if you ask him, he can explain what he's doing. Like, we do things that look weird, but those are just fractions of our training, and that includes, being on gear, whatever you want to call it, testosterone, you want to call it steroids, you want to call it PEDs, because I'm not just on testosterone. So when I go to compete, I'm on a couple of compounds, and we could talk about that, and I have in a lot of videos, but that's neither here nor there. It's really just about when I approach people, when I talk to them and I see something and I don't know, I ask. I just ask them, like, well, why do you do that? At your age, that sounds like it could be super dangerous. But there's always two sides to everything. What's the downsides of using? What's the downsides of not using? If I would not have gone on testosterone replacement therapy and I had not decided to do that cycle, what are the downsides of that? What were my motivations? The first cycle I ever did, my main motivation was trying to heal some of the injuries that I had on my back and my knee. And I was told that if I did a certain protocol to include peptides, that it would fix some of those problems. And that, with the change of training that I was doing, it did. And I learned the hard way, it also exacerbated some of the problems. I suffered a really bad injury, which was a major setback, and put me out of the sport for the better part of a year. So there are, nothing is guaranteed. There's no guaranteed safe, but often things aren't nearly as dangerous as people think they are either. We always take the extreme outliers, the worst case scenarios, the guys that died young, the people that are using way too much, the addicts, and we lump everybody into that same category, never considering that, hey, maybe this guy's working with a doctor. Maybe he's doing research. Maybe he's not doing that much. Maybe he's doing a ton. Who knows? He could be lying. Maybe he's shooting himself up with horse jizz. Like who? I went to the racetrack and robbed the guy's pharmaceutical bag and just started like banging that crap right into my nuts or something. Like, I don't know. Who knows? This guy's, wow, crazy. By asking questions instead of being presumptuous, you foster discourse. And there might be something to be learned from the conversation. I learn as much from you guys as you maybe might learn from me. A lot of times when I'm talking to people and they give me their point of view, I find that I have questions and there's things that I don't know as much as I thought I knew about, and I go and research, and a lot of times I'll take a lot of things that you guys say into consideration, and a lot of that trickles down into my program, and I make a lot of changes based off that, because there's a lot of things I was not even aware of. When I first went on TRT and did my first cycle, I had no idea what peptides were. Somebody introduced me to those, and I talked to a couple of doctors, and I got their opinions before I used them. It was an interesting conversation, because one of the doctors said that peptides are not for human consumption and I shouldn't mess with them. And another doctor told me, I don't understand why these aren't for prescription, because they work miracles. And then, of course, I had to use my best judgment, and I went ahead and tried it, and it did. It worked really, really well, and I would recommend 1,000,000 times over again. But then that's anecdotal, so you can't take what one person has done as gospel. Like, something might really, really work for me and be horrible for you. And my training's one of those. The type of training I do is not going to work for everybody. It's just like bench press. Some guys can do overhead presses and it translates directly to their bench and they get monster gains. Other guys like me, I could overhead press until my arms fall off and it will not affect my bench any way, shape, or form. So I didn't focus on that lift. That's a good example right there. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. But the one thing we should never do is presume things. You shouldn't presume what somebody's doing for their health. You shouldn't presume the kind of chemicals they're taking. You shouldn't presume their reasons for doing so, because you don't know anything about that person. It's just simple. We start asking questions and we take an interest in other people. You might find out something useful and you'll be able to change something in your life that you hadn't considered. That's been my experience. The bottom line, Father Time's undefeated. You can go hide in a hole if you want. You can play everything safe. I tried 2 months of clean eating, like total, vegan. I think I went vegan. That was back in 10 years ago. It was the most miserable couple of months of my life. It absolutely sucked. Was I getting healthier, losing weight, looking better? Yeah. And I thought, if I gotta live like this for the rest of my life, just end it now, because it was horrible. And the first thing I did was savage a box of Pop-Tarts. You gotta live a little. Tomorrow's promised to no one, people. Now, I'm not saying abandon all your responsibilities and throw caution to the wind and just go out there and be reckless. And I'm certainly not advocating for abuse of PEDs. Absolutely not. I'm not even saying you should use PEDs. I mean, if you're my age and you don't need them, that's awesome. Don't. But if you do, maybe have a little bit of an open mind. If something can improve the quality of your life and you can continue to do the things you love at a high level, mind you, most of the people that are commenting, they don't compete. They have no idea. They don't know what it's like to have a goal. I don't know. Something to think about. Love you guys. Subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. Let's continue the discussion.